Development Committee. Madam the Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Palomera,
Here.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, Commissioner Kinlock, Commissioner Clemente, Commissioner Baydoun,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Chair Hattis.
Present.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you. Next item.
B, Chair's remarks.
Well, I tell you, for the sake of the time we lost already, I'll hold on my remark. Next item.
C, approval of the April 4th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Motion been made and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those who agree, oh no, we're gonna vote. Please vote.
Motion carried.
Okay. Next item.
E, unfinished business. There is none listed.
Okay. We move to next item.
Item 1, under new business, forwarding the February 2023 monthly operating report for the Guardian Building and Freight Street parking deck.
Made. Support. And supported. Any discussion or question? Seeing none, all those who agree signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or vote, you know. I'll adjust to the technology every once in a while. Taken.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item.
Item 2, requesting commission approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the North Branch Ecorse Creek Drainage District.
Okay. Would you like to explain to the commissioner a little bit about this item? And we have with us Elvika Steele. How you doing? Good. Thank you.
There you go. Push the wrong button. There you go. Much better. If you recall, our department did a presentation for this body on batch 2 proposals. And in that presentation was several internal projects. And part of those initial internal projects was the North Branch Creek Drain project. We finally got the agreement, finally got it through the queue. And now it's before you today. So we do ask for your support and your approval on passing this project that is much needed. And what I'll do is I'll pass it to Elmika, who is the Deputy Director of DPS, to kind of go more into detail as to the support and how long this project goes as well.
Good morning to this honorable body. Elmika Steele, Deputy Director in the Wayne County Department of Public Services and also the Wayne County Drain Commissioner. I'm happy to be here this morning and again, echo the comments. We would appreciate your support of this agreement for the North Branch Ecorse Creek Drainage District. Many of you probably know some of things about the North Branch Ecorse Creek Drain, either through your own constituents or maybe some things you've seen on the news from time to time. But this project is really important for the drainage district because it will help facilitate a larger project when that becomes feasible. This is a very large drainage district. We're talking over 50,000 parcels that are in this drainage district. The Michigan Drain Code, which is the law that governs how maintenance and work is performed on county drains, has some limitations. There's a statutory limit on how much can be expended for maintenance. And while we do as much maintenance as we can, the law hasn't quite kept up with really what we see as wanting to do more. So this particular project will do primarily 3 things. Number 1 is going to do tree clearing and brush removal, sediment removal, and also bank erosion stabilization. So in terms of the schedule, upon approval by the commission, we would be able to move forward with finalizing, engineering, bid letting, and then hopefully we would be able to actually start construction this fall. The project would definitely be going into fiscal year 24. And there will be a lot of public outreach. This is going, literally you're sort of working in people's backyard, so to speak, but we would develop a plan to conduct the work and reaches along the drain. And we would certainly make sure that we're having communications with the stakeholders and making sure that, the residents and the businesses that would be impacted by the project would know what's going on and have an opportunity to even have site visits at their location if necessary, just for them to have a better understanding and comfort of the work that will be taking place. But this, like I said, this is very, very important groundwork. It's going to help facilitate a larger project. And by larger project, there's a couple of things that, are sort of in the works. Number one, some of you have probably heard that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has done a study and is intending to construct a basin in the city of Dearborn Heights. And that will be helpful. But there is an even much larger project that would be needed for the North Branch Ecorse Creek. In 2008, when Wayne County did some studies, the cost was in the range of $280 million. Today, that's probably closer to $500 or $600 million. Certainly, every time that we can advocate for our federal and state partners for funding, we're doing that and actively continuing to do so, so that cost would not be borne by the residents and the businesses in the drainage district. So either way it goes, this project is very, very much needed and would be very, very much helpful because it's things that would have to be done anyway to help facilitate whether it's the Army Corps project or the much larger, $500 million project that will hopefully get funding sometime in the future. So that's a pretty wide overview and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, can you tell the commissioner how many municipalities be involved in this?
Sure. So in terms of the actual work within the drainage district, there would be the cities of Lincoln Park, Ecorse, Melvindale, Allen Park, Dearborn Heights, Westland, and Romulus. So those are what we consider, along the riparian, meaning the drain, the routing course of the drain is running through those municipalities. The cities of Inkster and Taylor are also in the drainage district, but they're not, the routing course is not in those particular communities, but their lands benefit, meaning there's runoff that eventually will make its way to the North Branch Ecorse Creek. So every community in the drainage district receives a benefit.
It's very important because the capacity in that drain, it's not meeting the drain, it's not meeting the capacity because of economic development in the region, especially in Romulus and Van Buren and all those areas. I hope that would resolve a problem.
Well, I want to say this will help. This is not, I would not present this as this fixes every issue in the watershed. Drainage infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, as you've mentioned, it has a lot of components to it. We have most of our drains in Wayne County, believe it or not, were established in the late 1800s around the Civil War era. And so they were constructed for primarily, an agricultural purpose. Then of course, over time, we've had development to come in. The Wayne County Commission obviously was a leader in the early 2000s by adopting the stormwater ordinance. I always like to brag on the Wayne County Commission for being, really like the first in this region. Other counties are catching up to what the commission saw. But it's also the local communities, they also have to address issues within their local systems that obviously are not under our jurisdiction. So as a complete watershed, we all have to work together. And there's been a lot of discussion in various groups and meetings about taking regional approaches to stormwater infrastructure to make sure that as, there's a project going on here, there are other things going on there so that it helps the watershed as a whole.
Thank you. Commissioner Baidoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Almika. This is definitely a much needed project. I will fully support this. Being in the real estate business, I know the effect and the devastation it had on many of the residents in Dearborn Heights and some in Allen Park. So this $10 million project, should I call it like a prelude for what's coming in the future? And how will this $10 million help in terms of clearing a lot of these trees and the branches that you're talking about? Is this going to be like a 2-year project, 3-year
Yes.
project?
Correct, yes. So under the ARPA guidelines, we have to expend at least 70% of the funds by the end of fiscal year 24 and be completely finished with all of the work in 2025. So you're looking at a couple of years. Not all the work will be happening all at once, although in some cases we would be working in multiple reaches of the drain just because it is such a very accelerated timeline. But as you mentioned, tree clearing, yes, that is going to be happening. That's another reason why I mentioned we would definitely have significant public outreach so that people understand. You know, some people say, hey, take every tree out. And then other people say, don't touch that tree. You know, that was the tree, you know, somebody planted or, you know, things like that. But, you know, for the most part, there will be a large tree clearing, you know, effort within the various reaches of the drain.
Well, I'm hoping once you're completed with this project, we would have something already in motion on a much bigger scale to start, like maybe with the Army Corps of Engineers, because we don't want to wait another 15, 20 years and come back and say we need to invest another 20 million to do the same thing we're trying to do right now.
I am hoping the same thing. We had a meeting recently with the Army Corps staff, the Detroit district. They had a change in their project manager. They've not yet started design on their project. They're hoping to get that started very soon. The reality is, with the Army Corps process, they have funding right now just for design of the basin. They have to then get a congressional appropriation for the construction. And for those of you who have a little bit of background, the Army Corps process, believe it or not, started around 1988. That's how far back this goes. And in 1990, they had sort of gotten a little bit to this point, and then they never got the congressional appropriation. Then fast forward to the 2000s and things sort of picked back up. They just, you know, finalized the study. It's been a very, very long road. And that's part of the frustration, you know, for the residents, because they have a meeting and they hear, well, the Army Corps is still in a study phase. So we know that the Army Corps Detroit district is trying very hard to get funding. And that's another reason why it's very important as we're working with federal partners for them to really push and advocate to get funding. So once the Army Corps finishes design, which is going to take at least a year, then it would move into the next phase, which would be, you know, them trying to secure funding for actual construction of the basin. So it still could be just, you know, managing those expectations. You're still, for the Army Corps, assuming everything lines up, you're still probably talking, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years until something is actually constructed.
Yeah, I know Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is a big advocate of this
Yes,
project, and so is Congresswoman Debbie Dingell.
yes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation on this issue. You got my full support. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Amika, I wanted to tell you how proud I am that we have you and how thankful I am that we
Thank
have
you.
you in Wayne County and the great work that you do. And you're recognized, I think, all around the region, if not the state, for your abilities and your knowledge. And we appreciate you. There was a couple of questions that I had that have already been asked, but I wanted to ask, as far as who will be contributing to this besides, I know you mentioned the Corps of Engineers, but that's would take a congressional action to appropriate that money. But is the state kicking anything in for this?
They aren't, for the Army Corps project, just to clarify, is that what you're referring to? They are not. So there's a cost share between the Army Corps and the Drainage District. So the Army Corps is picking up 75% of the cost, and then the Drainage District is picking up the balance. So with all the Army Corps projects, there's a federal share and a non-federal share. So the construction cost for the basin is estimated around 25 million.
But the total cost, I think you said somewhere over $200 million.
Oh, no, now that one is that would not be the Army Corps project. That would be what we would call a petition project under the Michigan Drain Code. So there is no federal, ordinarily there would be no federal dollars. That would ordinarily be borne entirely by the Drainage District. So when those big numbers were coming out in the mid 2000s, that was one of the reasons why, Wayne County went back to the Army Corps and said, hey, we know this didn't go forward in, 1990. We really need for you to look at and what they basically said is, Army Corps, would you find a federal interest in a larger project, the 300 million? So they finally got up to the point in 2017-18, they declined to find a federal interest in a larger project, but they did indicate that they would authorize the basin project, which is smaller. It will help. But again, when we're really talking about what we think of in terms of what's needed, it would be that much larger project. So that's why we're still advocating for federal funding. And as Commissioner Baidu mentioned, we've had many conversations, again, Congresswoman Tlaib, Congresswoman Dingell, and others indicating that federal support would be needed. Otherwise, the traditional way of doing it would be the Drainage District would issue bonds and then be coming back before this body requesting a full faith and credit pledge. It would be very difficult to probably at this point, even with the bank crisis right now, some banks aren't even issuing drain bonds, because they're considering them somewhat of a risk. Some of them are, but when you're going and say, hey, will you loan me 600 million? That's a pretty big number.
Then it would certainly affect those in those drainage districts,
Correct,
right?
because they would then be assessed for that cost. And again, obviously there is a desire to make costs reasonable. We want to, address as many issues as possible, but you want to make obviously things affordable for those residents and those businesses and for the communities as well, because they receive an at-large assessment.
You touched on what the state allows the limit
Yes.
for the districts.
Correct.
Is there any effort, and did I misunderstand, or did you say it was $10 million a year?
No, I wish.
10.
It's $5,000 per mile of drain a year. So you can imagine how little that gets you. So as part of the Michigan Association of County Drain Commissioners, legislation, is being introduced to seek an increase, hold on to your seats, to $10,000 per mile every year. And trust me, it has been, it's 5,000 today. I'm sort of chuckling, but a few years back, it was 2,500, and in a few years before that, it was $750. There are varying opinions about keeping the limit where it is or increasing it. Some people say it's a way to make sure, taxes don't go up so high. But then, you have others who will say, come on, when you look at, inflation and just the cost of doing any type of maintenance work, that doesn't get you very much.
So, how many years has it been at the current level?
Oh, gosh. I would say 5+ years. Like I said before, it was $2,500.
Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
like you said, I
Thank you.
appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you.
Can you explain how much the county responsible for that and how much the municipality responsible for that cleanup?
So for this particular project, there would be no cost share to the Drainage District. So nothing would get assessed to the outside of the $10 million. If for some reason the project if there was some amount that went over that $10 million, then that cost would be assessed. But I don't know if that will, occur or not, if it would go above the $10 million project.
Commissioner Clemente?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming today. I've been receiving a lot of phone calls about clearing trees, seeing that I have 3 cities in this drain. So I appreciate you coming and I can take this information back. Just wondering, do you have anything written about this plan that I could present to
Sure.
my cities?
Yes, and I can provide that information and we can make sure we get that submitted.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson
Yes.
saying that
Yes.
you might come and present.
Okay, yes. Well, let me tell you, we will.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely. We are going to, as I mentioned, have a very, very extensive outreach. People naturally will have a lot of questions. I mean, they're going to have large equipment and machines, like I said, literally in their backyards. So what we're going to be doing is but as I mentioned, we're going to be doing the project in reaches. So let's say we're at reach 1, reach 2, we would be having conversations with those municipalities. Those residents are going to get, direct contact. We'll have webinars. They'll get direct mailings, knocking on doors. If, we talked about maybe even setting up a separate website where they can go and get the information directly, phone numbers where they can call and literally allow for them we can also schedule on-site, to have, some of the engineers or contractors literally in their backyard explaining to them what is going to happen and what they can expect. And then obviously, with the stakeholders, the elected officials, we will obviously be having meetings with them first, obviously, before we would be reaching out directly to their residents, so that they also know and understand what to expect.
I don't want you, not to commit you too much because I know your time is very valuable, but just making sure that I am or all the commissions are in the loop when you are doing this, because sometimes there's a communication breakdown between
Yes.
when,
Yes.
so I want to make sure that I'm there because I'm
Absolutely.
already getting questions to come to council meetings to explain what's going on and why it's not happening right now.
Yes.
So
It
it
will
would
be
very much,
happening soon.
yes, exactly. Once we
Yes.
have to, so I think it's just a process.
Understood.
They have to understand that we have to approve this first
Yes.
before.
Yes.
So they're just anxious. So thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming today. Lead pipes,
Mhm.
will you be removing or any of that?
No, we will
Okay.
not. So this is a open channel stormwater drain. The lead pipes, which is, and there are some efforts I know local communities are
Mhm.
looking at to remove their lead service lines for their drinking water. That's under the jurisdiction of those individual municipalities.
And the drainage district, who is, I guess, within that district? Is it only the communities that you
Correct.
talked about
the dra-
earlier?
Yes,
Okay.
it's the commu, so the drainage district, if you think about it, is the watershed. It means that all the water that falls, hits the ground and runs off eventually makes its way to that drain. So all the parcels that I talked about that would be within those communities. But in terms of like what we consider the drainage district, the public corporations, the communities, the landowners in the drainage district, there are assessments that go to the county on account of any county roads in the drainage district or railroads. So it's essentially any properties that would not be exempt from getting a tax to help that receive a benefit from the drain.
So that would include Redford Township?
Redford Township is not in this drainage district, but
Okay.
they're in another drainage district. So there are hundreds of drainage districts.
Okay,
So
but this one in particular, is there a number, like this is drainage district number 2, or, I mean,
yeah, some of them,
Yeah.
some of our drains have numbers,
Okay.
but literally in Wayne County, you're talking easily over 500 drains.
okay. So, because we're dealing with some issues in Redford with drainage and clearing of trees, and I didn't know if you were talking to overall, issues
So,
related.
if afterward, if you have some specific information, we can look at it.
Okay.
Some bodies of water, because we're using the word drain. When I use the word drain in this context, it's referring to a body of water that was made a drain pursuant to a process under the drain code. There are some bodies of water that could be a natural water course that is not technically a drain as it would be defined under the drain code, meaning
So Rouge is
the
not.
Rouge River is
is
not
not.
a drain, it's not a county drain. That's considered a natural water course.
And so this is out of ARPA dollars.
Yes.
And what's the impact on the overall ARPA dollars? Because I'm surprised this is coming from, I guess it would come from your department, but I envisioned it coming from the economic development, our overall
Yes,
ARPA
it
plan.
is, it is.
Okay.
I'm just here speaking here, but it definitely is
Is-
under economic development.
Okay. And so maybe I should ask the fiscal if you know what type of impact this will have on our overall ARPA dollars.
As in like the remaining funds
Right.
or, okay. And I believe economic development is going to be presenting the final. I don't know, so I'll have to,
Yeah, because I'm just looking at the big picture.
yes.
Like we keep pulling at these dollars and taking away, and the next thing we know, they're all gone, and some of the projects we were looking at aren't being done. So just, yeah.
Commissioner, I think this one would have a positive impact on how we spend ARPA money, because when we have a drain meet the capacity and the future development in the area, that would make it easier for economic development in all those municipalities.
Mhm.
I think ARPA money to enhance our infrastructure to be ready for more economic development. And as you know, the region now, it is hot spot in the state of Michigan, all the way around the city of Detroit for economic development. Many of big company, corporation, logistics, especially economic development. So that it's a positive step in the right direction to enhance the economic development in the area.
Right, and I agree with that. I just want to know the overall impact that it's having as we look at how we're going to spend the rest of whatever's left. I don't even know what that looks like right now. And so that's why I was gonna wanted to just get some clarification on that, on where we are.
You know, we went through the phase 1 and phase 2, and now the administration working on some of the need and
For phase 3.
municipality and Wayne County.
Right, right.
Based on economic development, ready to be developed in the area. So
Right, and again, I was looking at the third phase coming out, so we would actually see what that phase looked like and what we're allocating the rest of our ARPA dollars to. I just didn't want to see it dwindle away and then we don't really have a lot of the other projects.
Mr. Chair,
So just wanted clarification.
you hoping to bring a point to the clarification. So this was already approved. This came out of possibly, I believe, the second batch. So this was already approved. So this is already encumbered funds from the ARPA monies. What we're voting on now is the effectuating of those,
project.
yes,
I
the
get that,
intergovernmental
yeah.
agreement. So this we already knew was
Right,
coming out. So this isn't some additional funds coming from the money. So we sat for an hour and so and talked about these projects, this
Right.
project, yeah. So it's
Okay.
not new, I'm just saying.
right. And again, I'm just being clear as to where the dollars are coming from and the impact
Right.
of our overall ARPA dollars. So
Right,
it's
so
it's
previous
a really
dollars.
straightforward question. I just want it cleared up. That's all.
Mr. Brown.
Testing. And through the Chair, Darcel Brown, liaison for the Wayne County Executive's Office, Commissioner Baker McCormick, as mentioned earlier, as you already know, this was presented during phase 2 of the ARPA presentation. The department is currently in the process of working on phase 3, and we're going to make sure that we have communication with the commissioners as well, and provide you an update very soon regarding that and the amount that's left over.
So at this point, it's not going to have a greater impact than what was already proposed to us in the second phase.
That's correct, because this was
That's
already,
all.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I think it's important, Mr. Chair, for you to clarify, the projects that will be presented are not necessarily, you're going to be making recommendations for projects that will be for our consideration. So it may not be necessarily a specific project that we may have endorsed or been advocating for, correct? Or will all the projects be one that have been advocated by the commissioners?
Well, again, we'll be having a presentation soon. I don't want to speak for the director, but we're going to make sure that we have tight communication with the commissioners regarding phase 3.
Thank you.
And do we know when we will have that communication of phase 3?
At this time, I don't have a hard dead date, but we are diligently working on getting those out, because we do know that the funds need to be out to the communities and spent as well. So I'll follow up with our director, and I'll ensure that he communicates that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baydun, welcome.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Almika, I have a question for you, one more question. But before I ask you the question, I just would like to say this. You know, with the funding of the ARPA money, it's intended to be used to better our communities, which is going to be in the best interest of all the residents in Wayne County. And I couldn't think of a better way of investing some of this money than this, because this project is going to impact so many communities that have suffered for so many years anytime we have a big rainfall. The other question that I have, Almika, on the issue of the trees, as you know, we have a lot of tree lovers. I'm one of the people who love trees. So we're clearing basically the dead trees and the branches that are in the pathway. What about along the banks of the Ecorse Creek, the live trees, the healthy trees? Is there going to be objection? Are we going to have to cut some of those trees? Because those trees could cause problems 2, 3, 4 years from now, right? Okay, is that part of the process, is identifying, taking down other trees, not only the dead trees as well?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Commissioner. So a lot of times people think of the channel obviously being cleared, but the drain has an easement, on parcels, either side, top of bank. That is one of the things why we're going to be so very robust in our public outreach. Sometimes people have a fence. And like I said, some people want, oh, that tree gives me privacy, or maybe they have some sentimental feeling about it. So that is why when we go through and we're going to be taking a look at obviously the easements for every area, we know that there are encroachments, probably very significant encroachments. But our goal, one of the important things about ongoing maintenance, and the reason why you really don't want trees or fences or other obstructions, is you want to always have the easiest access possible to maintain a drain. And so it gets very difficult when contractors have to work around, a shed or this or that. We are obviously going to be sensitive to residents. We know, again, to the extent possible, there may be a tree here or there that people will tag it, but they'll tag it and they'll say, hey, leave this one or leave that one. But the goal is to try to do as much tree clearing as we can to do exactly what you just mentioned. We want to avoid situations in the future where, maybe there's a storm and a tree falls over, and then you've got to go out and address that issue. And sometimes landowners do not understand that ordinarily, if a tree is on their property and falls over, it's their responsibility to remove as the landowner. They don't always understand that. So part of this process is not only just the work, it's also the public education, educating people as to what we're doing and why we're doing it and the benefit it would have, you know, in the immediate as well as in the future.
Including in your study or whatever due diligence you have done, are there a lot of residents in those communities, they may have encroached on the easements
Yes,
of the county and they put like a shed or a
Yes.
structure?
yes.
Okay, those would have to be removed, obviously.
Well, we will, that honestly is a challenge we'll work through. I mean, in some cases, when we do projects, there are things that can be, I'm saying, more readily removed, like a fence. If somebody's garage is there, you know, those would be conversations we would
Yeah.
have with the contractor to say, you know, you'll have to work around that. Those are definitely the things we'll be working through in the various phases and reaches. And then also recognizing, you know, no two parcels may be alike, so to speak. So we may have to have, you know, an accommodation here or there to try to work around those things.
Thank you again, Almika.
Thank you.
Thank you, Almika. I think you cleared a lot of question in mind, especially on the drain. And we appreciate your expertise, and I appreciate your response always to the need of the communities I represent, at least. Any other question from the commissioner? Seeing none, we move to the next item. We need to vote on that. Oh, I think we can't approve it without the vote. So, okay. Yes. Yes. Oh,
Good morning. I just wanted to state for the record, similar to the other ARPA projects where the subcontractors were not known at the time, because normally we know that information right now, the department has agreed that they will submit that information to the commission when it becomes available. So similar to the other projects, that is also included in your resolution. And we've had that discussion with the department. I just wanted to put that on record for your information.
so the motion would include based on submitting that for the full board?
No, so no. That will come after the fact, and it will come as a receiving file once they get to the process of actually bidding and knowing the subcontractors. So we don't need that in the motion, but I just wanted you to know that that has been addressed and it is in your resolution.
Noted. If there are no other question, please vote.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item,
F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
have none. Next item,
Public comments.
anybody from the public like to comment on the Economic Development Committee meeting? We have any email?
There are no emails.
Anybody online like to comment? For the last time, anybody online like to comment on the Economic Development Committee meeting? Seeing none, next item.
Adjournment.
Support. Motion been made and supported. All those who agree signify by saying aye. Oppose, motion carried.